The walls were breathing in sync with my heartbeat. I froze in the dim light of my apartment, the air thick with unnatural humidity that clung to my skin like sweat-soaked clothing, heavy and oppressive, trapping me in its damp embrace. It was just after midnight, after a late shift at the diner, my feet aching from hours on cracked linoleum, serving coffee to night owls whose eyes mirrored my exhaustion. I expected the familiar silence of my cramped one-bedroom to envelop me like a worn blanket, a small comfort in the relentless grind of city life where every day blurred into the next, marked only by the clatter of dishes and the hollow echoes of small talk. But tonight, that silence was subverted by the walls pulsing, subtle at first, like a living organism expanding and contracting with a rhythm mimicking my pulse, but feeling alien and invasive, intruding on my solitude in this indifferent city that swallowed dreams whole. I pressed my hand against the cool plaster in the hallway, expecting the aged chill and rough texture of decades-old neglect, but felt warmth emanating from within, a faint vibration like a hidden heartbeat mocking my fragile existence, as if the building itself was aware of my weariness and sought to mirror it back in a twisted parody. This wasn't the first oddity since moving into this old 1920s building on a forgotten street, where streetlights flickered like dying fireflies, casting erratic shadows that danced mockingly on the pavement, and neighbors kept to themselves, doors barred in eroded isolation, their lives intersecting only in fleeting elevator glances or muffled arguments through thin walls. Whispers had started a week ago, faint murmurs from the vents like smoke from a distant fire, fragmented syllables in a long-dead language, perhaps echoing from immigrant workers who built it during the Great Depression, their dreams lingering like ghosts in the mortar, tales of hardship and unfulfilled hopes that seeped into the very foundations, waiting for new souls to ensnare. As the night wore on, the breathing grew louder, more insistent, pulling my heart into a frantic tattoo that tightened my chest with deep dread, stirring childhood memories of storms raging outside my family's modest home, where I'd huddle under covers imagining monsters in the wind's howl, shapes that now seemed prophetic in this urban nightmare. I felt this force in my veins, the building trying to synchronize us, erasing the boundaries of self in a grotesque symphony that promised unity but delivered only erasure, a reflection of how the city itself isolated us, turning individuals into anonymous specks in a concrete jungle. I backed into the living room, eyes darting to shadows stretching unnaturally under the feeble yellow bulb, twisting like reaching fingers with deliberate malice, as if they were extensions of the wall's will, probing for weaknesses in my resolve. The furniture looked wrong, my armchair tilting as if listening intently to my ragged breaths, creaking in time with the walls, the coffee table rippling like disturbed water on a pond after a stone's throw, its surface undulating in waves that made my stomach churn. That's when the first microstory unfolded in my mind, triggered by the dread coiling in my gut. The old woman in 3B, Mrs. Elias, whose life intertwined with this building's cursed history in ways that now felt intimately connected to my own unraveling. She'd lived here for decades, a testament to endurance amid urban decay, weathering wars and personal losses without ever leaving the confines of these walls, her routine a quiet rebellion against the chaos outside. Morning tea by the window overlooking the alley, evenings knitting scarves no one would wear, her presence a fading echo in the building's lore. One evening, I heard her screaming through the pipes, a raw wail like being torn apart from the inside, echoing for hours with thuds suggesting a desperate struggle against unseen forces, sounds that pierced the night and lodged in my dreams like shards of glass. By morning, she was gone, her room stripped bare, no floral dresses hanging in the closet, no porcelain cats perched on shelves with unblinking eyes, no lingering scent of lavender that had once wafted faintly into the hallway like a ghost of comfort. The super shrugged it off as skipping rent, his voice gruff and dismissive, but I'd seen her eyes dart nervously to the walls during our rare encounters in the lobby, whispering about the watchers within that observed every sigh and secret, entities born from the building's long history of absorbed sorrows. Now, as the walls heaved with increasing fervor, I heard her voice cutting through the din. "Don't let it in," resonating with my own desperation in this city isolation, where connections were fleeting nods in the stairwell or complaints about the interminable heat that turned summer into a suffocating furnace, reminding me how alone we all truly were, each in our private hells. The escalation came swiftly, like a storm rolling in over the jagged skyline, thunder rumbling in the distance as if the heavens themselves approved of the building's awakening. Cracks spiderwebbed the ceiling, widening into fissures that snaked across the surface like veins under strained skin, dust sifting down like fine ash from a crematorium, coating my tongue with the bitter tang of metal and decay, evoking images of forgotten attics filled with relics of lives long past. My phone buzzed on the counter, its vibration syncing eerily with the walls. "It's already inside you," from an unknown number, words laced with intimate malice that knew my buried fears, the gnawing doubt of purpose after years of dead-end jobs, the ache of lost friendships fated by distance and neglect. Panic clawed up my throat, vision blurring at the edges as if the room itself was dissolving, pulling me into its maw. I ran to the door, hands slipping on the slick knob coated in a sudden sheen of moisture, but it wouldn't budge, the frame groaning like a living barrier swelling to seal me in, trapping me with the rhythm that now pounded in my temples. The climax hit when the walls split open with a visceral tearing sound, like flesh ripping under pressure, revealing hundreds of eyes embedded in the raw, pulsating interior, blinking in unison with a wet, synchronized flutter, watching me with a chilling hunger that stripped away all illusions of safety. Weeping black ichor that pooled at my feet, sticky and alive with writhing tendrils that quested like blind worms toward warmth. I screamed, a primal sound that echoed back distorted, pounding the door with fists that bruised against the unyielding wood, but the eyes pierced my soul, delving into memories I'd buried deep. The lonely nights scrolling through social media feeds of others' fabricated joys, the hollow echo of laughter in empty rooms. Whispers coalesced from the fissures. "Join us," hooks of sound dragging me toward a collective abyss where individuality dissolved into the mass. A seductive call that mirrored the city's false promises of community amid its crushing anonymity. I collapsed to my knees, the ichor lapping at my ankles with a cold, insistent touch, and as it seeped into my skin, the breathing merged with mine, blurring the line between self and structure in a seductive violation that promised belonging in exchange for autonomy. Like a lover's embrace after the profound loneliness that had driven me to this rundown haven, seeking refuge from the world's indifference only to find a deeper trap. That was the beginning, the prelude to the horrors that unfolded in the lives of others. Each story a thread in the building's tapestry of dread, weaving our isolations into a shared fate. 2 days later, neighbor Jake's tale mirrored mine in haunting parallels, painted through the lens of his artistic soul, reflecting the creative isolation that defined his existence in this concrete labyrinth. Jake, a lanky skeptic in his late 20s with paint-splattered jeans and a perpetual shadow of stubble, laughed off my frantic warnings during our elevator rides, clapping my shoulder with a rare camaraderie that felt like a lifeline in the building's oppressive quiet, his easy grin a brief respite from the growing unease. But after hearing my cries piercing the night, he couldn't shake the curiosity, investigating with the bold curiosity of an artist drawn to the macabre. His cluttered studio was a chaos of canvases capturing the city's grit. Rainy alleys slick with neon reflections, shadowed subway faces etched with quiet desperation, works that poured out his inner world of unspoken yearnings and frustrations. The air felt charged that evening, static prickling his skin like the prelude to a storm, brushes scattered across the floor as if scattered by an invisible hand. They moved on their own then, lifting with eerie grace, forming distorted faces with wide, terror-filled eyes that echoed the dread I described in our lobby coffee chat over stale donuts, eyes that seemed to stare back with accusatory intensity. He froze, heart hammering, watching the lines deepen without his guidance, paint flowing against gravity in rivulets that defied logic, pooling and reshaping into forms that mocked his control. The paintings came alive in a frenzy, colors bleeding into shadowy figures that mimicked his every movement, fluid and adaptive like predators stalking prey in the dim light, their forms shifting from abstract smears to recognizable silhouettes. A hunched figure reminiscent of Mrs. Elias, another blurring into my own panicked face from that night. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, voice cracking as he backed toward his unmade bed, the figures multiplying across the walls, eyes following with an insatiable gaze that turned his once sanctuary into a suffocating cage, feeding ravenously on the isolation he cherished as fuel for his art, now weaponized against him. Reflecting amid the chaos, Jake saw it as a targeted assault, preying on the uniqueness that isolated him. My exhaustion from service drudgery, his reclusive art that kept the world at arm's length, preferring the company of pigments to people. The figures whispered his deepest doubts, the unfinished dreams of a gallery show that never materialized, the sting of his ex-girlfriend's parting words about his emotional solitude now twisted into taunting echoes that reverberated in the room. One figure solidified into her likeness, her painted eyes narrowing in accusation, mouth forming silent words of neglect that spiraled him into a vortex of regret, memories flooding back of arguments in rain-slicked streets, her frustration at his withdrawal into creative obsessions. He swiped at the canvas, but the paint clung, smearing across his hands like blood, only to reform stronger. The climax built as a central figure detached fully, grabbing his wrist with an icy burn that seared through fabric, pulling him inexorably toward the canvas's depths, its grip like iron vines. He fought with desperate adrenaline, knocking over easels in a clatter of splintering wood, but the intrusion spread like a tattoo across his skin, burning with visions. Mrs. Elias dissolving into the walls with a final, gurgling scream, her form merging seamlessly. My own surrender to the ichor, face contorted in reluctant ecstasy. Even glimpses of Harlan's untold struggles, linking our fates in a chain of consumption. He broke free at last, the figure dissolving into swirling colors that dripped to the floor, but the mark on his wrist pulsed in time with the building's breath, a permanent reminder etched in flesh, throbbing with every heartbeat as if the entity had claimed a piece of him. Breath ragged, he fled to my door, pounding with fists streaked in drying paint, eyes wild with the terror of one who had glimpsed the abyss. But by then I'd been claimed, my whispers joining the vent's chorus, a silent bond of horror forming between us before the isolation reclaimed its throne, pulling us back into separate silences. That was 6 months ago, or was it? Time blurred in the haze of endurance, much like it did in the third microstory, centered on the super, Mr. Harlan, a grizzled man in his 60s with scarred hands from years of manual labor and sorrowful eyes that had witnessed countless unravelings in this decaying monument. He'd maintained the building's secrets with a stoic silence. Dusty Prohibition-era bottles hidden in the basement corners, the nightly creaks that he attributed to settling foundations but knew hid deeper truths. On a stormy evening, toolbox in hand and rain lashing the windows like accusatory fingers, he descended to fix a persistent basement leak, the air down there damp with mold and faint echoes of laughter long faded, a tomb for forgotten revelries. Water pooled from the rupture, forming words in the puddles that shimmered unnaturally. Feed us, the letters bubbling up as thunder hammered above, the demand carrying the weight of hunger accumulated over decades. Pipes groaned in response, spewing sinuous tendrils of dark fluid that wrapped around his ankles with surprising strength, dragging him toward the pulsing veins of the building's underbelly, glowing with an otherworldly luminescence that cast eerie shadows on rusted pipes. Harlan reflected then on the tenants who'd vanished like Mrs. Elias, or the musician in 4C whose violin strings had snapped one night, his melodies twisting into discordant wails before silence claimed him, an artist much like Jake whose passion became his undoing. He dismissed the rumors as urban myths, chalking them up to drifters and the bottle. But now he felt the entity's insidious history, feeding on the isolation of city dwellers, turning solitary souls into extensions of its form, shadows detaching from walls to reveal hollow faces of past tenants, mouths agape and eternal, silent screams that pleaded for release. Examples flooded his mind. The young mother in 5A who'd paced endlessly with a crying infant, her exhaustion mirroring mine, until one dawn her steps ceased, room empty save for a crib dusted in cobwebs. The elderly veteran in the penthouse whose war stories trailed off into mutters at the walls, vanishing like smoke. He swung his wrench in defiance, the metal whistling through air, but it passed harmlessly through the apparitions, which reformed with mocking fluidity, spectral fingers tracing the deep worry lines etched on his face from years of quiet regrets. He thought of his long-left wife, her departure a wound that never healed, and his distant daughter whose calls grew rarer, the isolation amplifying every unspoken apology, like the time he ignored a tenant's frantic plea for help, pounding on his door late one night, only to find an empty room the next day, echoes of struggle mocking his inaction. The climax surged as the tendrils pierced his skin with needle-like precision, injecting a cold fire that raced through his veins, glowing blue under his flesh and illuminating a cascade of regrets in vivid detail. Missed birthdays, faded letters, the slow erosion of connections in the city's indifferent tide. In that glow, he saw the origin, a devastating 1940s fire that had claimed lives in the building, binding their essences to the structure in a pact of eternal hunger, now evolving to consume the modern plague of solitude, where technology connected yet isolated, screens glowing brighter than real bonds. With a guttural roar, he severed a tendril with his tool, black fluid spraying like arterial blood, but the glow lingered as luminescent veins threading under his skin, a badge of partial surrender that marked him as both victim and vessel. Staggering upstairs through the flickering stairwell lights, he tried to warn the remaining tenants in hoarse whispers, tales of the entity's appetite, but they were dismissed as the mad ramblings of an old man losing his grip, eyes rolling in skepticism. His story transitioned seamlessly to the young couple in 2A, their arrival a hopeful spark amid the gloom, a brief illusion of vitality that the darkness methodically extinguished, drawing them into the web with deceptive gentleness. Unpacking boxes amid the scent of takeout Chinese, steaming dumplings and fried rice that filled the air with fleeting normalcy. She, a sharp-eyed journalist named Elena with notebooks full of untold stories. He, a tech, was named Marco, fiddling with gadgets to outpace the city's disconnection. Their voices wove a melody contrasting the dirges of our solitary existences, laughter echoing down halls like a challenge to the silence. But as they settled, the mirrors in their bathroom and bedroom began to betray them, reflecting not their vibrant selves but pale, eyeless versions of the building's previous inhabitants, mouths stretched in perpetual screams that silent but visceral. Elena paused mid-unpack, her reflection smiling independently with a rictus grin, eyes deepening into bottomless pits that seemed to pull at her gaze, drawing forth visions of her own isolation. The late nights chasing leads alone in dimly lit offices, the erosion of personal life for professional ambition. The reflections moved with autonomous malice, hands pressing against the glass from within with dull thuds that vibrated through the frame, nails scratching furrows that etched accusations into the silver backing. She felt internal tugs sinking with the building's breath, a rhythmic pull in her chest like an extra heartbeat. Marco dismissed it at first as stress from the move, until his own mirror beckoned with a figure resembling him but warped, gesturing for him to come closer, whispering through the glass about his detachment, endless hours coding in isolation, social apps ironically highlighting how few real ties he maintained. They regretted ignoring the online reviews that hinted at weird vibes in the building, whispers of unease from past renters, amplifying their self-imposed bubble into an inescapable trap where intimacy curdled into paranoia, every glance now suspect. Elena recalled the crackling phone calls during her investigations, static laced with faint whispers that she'd attributed to bad connections, but now recognized as the entity's probing. Marco thought of his community app notifications, pings of virtual interactions that underscored his emotional void, friends reduced to avatars. The climax erupted as the mirrors shattered inward with an explosive crash, shards flying like deadly confetti to embed in their flesh, drawing blood that the reflections lapped up greedily, reforming around the wounds into grotesque mosaics of skin and glass. Visions assaulted them. Jake's frantic paint struggle, colors swirling in rebellion. My surrender to the ichor, a moment of blurred ecstasy. Harlan's glowing veins pulsing with regret. Even Mrs. Elias's final dissolution, her form crumbling into plaster, feeding the insatiable cycle that bound us all. In desperation, they sealed the mirrors with duct tape and plywood scavenged from the basement, huddling amid half-unpacked belongings in the dim glow of a single lamp. But the pulls eroded their sanity inch by inch, whispers tempting with promises of unity in the collective, a false community to fill the voids of their urban lives. I moved out 3 years ago, or did I? The building calls to me still in dreams, its rhythmic breath a persistent reminder of what was lost and what was gained in that merging of selves. Last night, a knock echoed at my new door, familiar in its insistence, and as I approached, the walls here began to pulse faintly, insistently, drawing me back into the fold with inexorable pull. The cycle endures unbroken, isolation nourishing it like weeds in cracked concrete. And I wonder if true escape was ever possible, or if we're all merely extensions of that ancient structure, our rhythms subsumed into an unending chorus of subsumed lives, breathing as one in eternal, haunted harmony.